Welcome to your deep dive, listeners. This one's all about those, seemingly ordinary moments, the ones that end up shaping who we become.
Yeah, it's kind of like those little things in movies,
Yikes!
They seem insignificant, but later you're like, whoa, this...
Oh, yeah, exactly. We're diving into Rick Strassman's book, My Altered States.
Oh, cool.
We've also got some of his research papers, too. We're going to try to figure out how all these crazy experiences, some with drugs, some without, really impacted his life.
Sounds fascinating.
Huh.
I'm already intrigued.
So have you ever wondered how, like, your own setting has impacted these big moments in your life, like those turning points?
Oh, absolutely. The environment we're in, our mindset, it all plays a huge role in how we perceive things.
Mm-hmm.
Strassman talks about this concept called set and setting, which basically means the context surrounding an experience is just as important as the experience itself.
Makes sense.
Like, think about it. How you react to something totally depends on your mood, right? Like, imagine a surprise party. If you're already stressed, you might freak out. But if you're in a good mood, you're going to be ecstatic. Same event, different set. Now, apply that to something like, say, psychedelics.
Oh, wow, yeah. That could make things really intense.
Exactly. Strassman describes his first time taking a psilocybin-related compound, and it was a wild ride. He had this incredibly vivid vision, like he was transported back to 1920s Poland.
Didn't he see himself as a kid with his grandfather or something?
Yeah. That's the thing. It wasn't just some random vision. Strassman knew about his family history in Poland, and he was also pretty anxious that day. So he connects this back to set and setting.
So, like, those anxieties and knowing about his family history kind of set the stage for that specific vision.
That's what he suggests. Is like those things primed him for that particular experience.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, right? Like, how much of what we experience is influenced by our pre-existing thoughts and emotions?
That's kind of freaky. Like, all those random thoughts we have might actually be connected to something bigger.
It's definitely a mind-bending concept.
Yeah.
Strassman even delves into this idea of Maimonides' active intellect, which suggests there's this universal storehouse of knowledge we can potentially tap into.
Whoa. So we're all connected to like a giant cosmic library or something?
Not exactly, but it does make you wonder about things like shared dreams or why certain themes pop up in altered states across different cultures.
It's kind of like we're all tuning into the same radio station but picking up different frequencies.
It's a very cool analogy, and it's definitely relevant to his later research on DMT. But getting back to Strassman himself, his childhood sounds pretty rough. He had a really controlling father.
Yeah, I was reading about that. Sounds like his dad had a real need for order, and Strassman was, well, a pretty energetic kid.
Strassman describes himself as very strong-willed, constantly clashing with his dad's need for control. And unfortunately, there was some physical punishment involved.
Oh, man, that's awful.
It really is. He talks about trying to, like, outsmart the punishment to minimize the pain, but of course that just made things worse.
Poor kid. You can't blame him for trying to avoid getting hurt.
Right. But the interesting thing is, he learned to just relax into the pain, almost like an early form of meditation or something, like a way of exerting some control in an uncontrollable situation.
So even as a kid, he was already grappling with this need for control.
Yeah, and it seems to have shaped his later fascination with altered states. You know, even without drugs, Strassman was drawn to these moments of mental escape.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. But it's kind of a funny story.
It is. He found solace and a sense of expansion by, get this, reading the World Book Encyclopedia on the toilet.
Seriously, the toilet.
Think about it. For a kid in a tough home environment, the bathroom can be a sanctuary.
True. It's like your own little fortress of solitude.
Exactly. And for Strassman, it was a chance to dive deep into knowledge, like his personal library of escape.
I get that. We all have our own versions of that, those little things we do to escape and recharge.
Definitely. And it wasn't just books. He was also fascinated by chemistry and, of all things, pyrotechnics. It's like he was drawn to controlled chaos.
So even then, he was exploring those boundaries between order and disorder.
Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of exploring boundaries, his first experience with alcohol in college was not great.
More than the usual college awkwardness.
Way more. He was with this woman, Terry, and it just felt so forced, like he was performing rather than connecting. And the hangover, he woke up surrounded by kittens, totally disoriented. It was like a complete mind-body rejection.
Wow. I mean, I've had some bad hangovers, but nothing involving kittens, so alcohol was a no-go. But what about other substances?
Well, his experience with hashish was completely different. He describes this incredible revelation of auditory space, like he could hear the silence between musical notes. a deeply profound experience.
So alcohol was like a closed door, and cannabis opened up this whole new way of perceiving reality.
Exactly. And it does seem to foreshadow his later interest in psychedelics. But for Strassman, it wasn't just about getting high. He was searching for meaning, for something bigger. He even tried to write a manifesto for saving the world with psychedelics.
A manifesto. So he was serious about this. What was he thinking?
Well, that's what we'll explore next time. Let's just say his enthusiasm didn't exactly win over the med schools he applied to.
Not a surprise there.
Yeah. But there's a twist to the story. He ended up getting accepted to a school he didn't even apply to.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to hear how that happened.
Tune in next time and we'll dive into that and more.
This deep dive just keeps getting deeper, listeners. We'll see you next time for part 2.
So, last time we left off with Strassman trying to change the world, one psychedelic at a time.
A noble goal, perhaps, but not exactly med school material.
Yeah, I mean, picture it, right? You're sitting there in a suit trying to get into vet school and you're talking about
Manifestos.
manifestos,
And psychedelics.
and how they're going to
Save the world? Oh, yeah. Save the world, right. You know?
Not a typical interview strategy.
Not a typical strategy, no. I'm guessing that's why most med schools were like,
Thanks, but no thanks.
yeah, but there's a twist, right? He gets into this school, Einstein College of Medicine.
A school he didn't even apply to.
Crazy, huh?
Fate works in mysterious ways.
It really does. But even at Einstein, things don't exactly smooth out for him. New York City, it just kind of amps up all his anxieties.
Big city life can be overwhelming for sure, especially when you're already grappling with deeper existential stuff.
Yeah, and he was in med school, which is no walk in the park.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Plus, he was in this intense relationship with a woman named Clarissa.
Oh, yeah. That didn't sound very stable either.
It was a lot to handle all at once. And it all kind of culminated in this breakdown he had while hiking with Clarissa and some friends.
Wait, a breakdown. While hiking, I always find nature to be so grounding.
You and me both. But for Strassman, it triggered this overwhelming feeling of being watched, judged. He even started thinking he was crazy, that he belonged in a psych ward.
Whoa. That's heavy stuff. I guess it goes to show how even in seemingly positive environments, our internal struggles can still take over.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of having a good support system. Luckily, Strassman had a friend, Sam, who was able to talk him down.
Those people who can bring you back from the edge, they're so valuable.
Absolutely. So, Strassman didn't end up in a hospital, but this breakdown was a turning point. He left med school and went back to California.
Back to California, wow. So what did he do? Try to surf it all away?
Not quite. He turned to Zen Buddhism, seeking solace in a different kind of structure.
Interesting. From psychedelics to Zen Buddhism, it's quite a shift.
But maybe not so surprising when you think about those early patterns we talked about. His need for control, for a strong guiding figure.
You're right. It's like he was always searching for that same level of authority, but now in a spiritual context.
Exactly. So he ends up at this Zen temple, drawn to the discipline, the hierarchy, the whole idea of surrendering to a higher power.
Did he find what he was looking for?
Well, that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Ooh, cliffhanger. I can't wait to see how this all wraps up. So last time, we left Strassman at this Zen temple, right? Trying to find some peace.
Yeah, but like we were saying, those anxieties, that need for control, they don't just vanish overnight. You know?
They definitely don't. So did the Zen temple actually help him? Did he find that enlightenment he was searching for?
Well, it's complicated. He was definitely drawn to the discipline, the structure of it all, the idea of letting go.
Right.
But at the same time, he also started to feel a bit uneasy about the rigidity, like, what about individual expression?
So it's like he was stuck between these two opposing forces.
Yeah, exactly. He wanted a path, but he didn't want to just blindly follow someone else's path, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally get that. So what did he do?
Well, he ends up leaving the Zen temple.
He left. Wow. I mean, it sounds like he really needed that structure.
He did, but it just wasn't the right fit for him in the long run. He realized he needed to find his own way to balance those two things, structure and freedom,
That takes a lot of courage to walk away from something like that.
It does. But it also shows how much he valued his own individuality. He wasn't going to just conform to someone else's idea of enlightenment.
So what does this all mean for us, the listeners? What can we take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that it's okay to question things, to not have all the answers.
To not have it all figured out.
Exactly. Strassman's life wasn't about reaching some perfect state of being. It was about constantly exploring, making mistakes, and learning from those experiences.
Yeah, I guess it's like even those detours and wrong turns can end up being valuable in the end.
Absolutely. They can lead to unexpected discoveries, new perspectives, and I think that's something we can all apply to our own lives.
It's like instead of trying to force things to fit into some predetermined mold, maybe we should embrace the messiness, the uncertainty.
Exactly. Life is a journey, not a destination, right? And that journey is going to be full of ups and downs, unexpected turns. And that's okay. In fact, that's what makes it interesting.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into my altered states, what's the one thing you want listeners to remember?
I hope they'll be inspired by Strassman's willingness to question everything, to push boundaries, to embrace the unknown, and maybe, just maybe, they'll be encouraged to do the same in their own lives.
To find those altered states that challenge them to grow, to learn, to become more fully themselves.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's
Yeah.
all about expanding our horizons, right?
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe those seemingly ordinary moments, those little quirks and unexpected detours will turn out to be the most extraordinary experiences of all.
You got it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll catch you next time with another fascinating exploration.